Well, welcome to the CEEMS project, and in particular to this special course that has been structured for the CEEMS Fellows. We are very excited about it, and I hope you will be also excited about it. Let me go through a few logistics. The course basically is structured to make of future fellows, which are you all, to become proponents of a teaching pedagogy which has been specially developed for this project, which is called challenge-based learning, and incorporated in that is integrated inside the challenge-based learning is the engineering design process to be an integral component of it. So this whole course is structured with that goal in mind, okay? And that goal is the goal with the teachers with whom you will be working also, except the difference will be you're in a university environment and they are in middle schools and high schools. So one of the things is you have to become a little bit, some of you already have exposure to middle and high schools here. For some it is a new experience. So that fill in the gap has to be somehow accomplished. So that is another goal of the course, to before you start working with the teachers, to make you aware of what are the issues as far as teaching goes in the K-12 world is concerned, how are teachers accountable to demonstrate that they're doing a good job as far as teaching is concerned, and also documenting that the students are achieving the required performance standards. So one of the things very upfront that will be talked about to you will be regarding this issue of the standards that the teachers. These are very similar to ABET learning objectives and the program outcomes are concerned, except the word that is used is standards. For our undergraduate engineering program, we have ABET requirements, and it is very similar to that. So basically it is the whole program has certain objectives and learning outcomes. Each course that the teachers will be taking have the same thing, and the teachers, the materials that they develop and take back to the classroom have learning outcomes, student learning outcomes. So one feeds into the other, but they have to be mapped, and ultimately everything has to be mapped to the project objectives and the program learning outcomes. So one thing, let me just very briefly go through the course structure. Whitney Gaskins is the coordinator of this course. She has structured the course for you all. It will be very different. Brian, you took a course with the GK to 12. This will be quite different than that, but you will have a little bit advantage of some of the things that you learned from there, and hopefully you will be conveying that to your other fellows. Okay, so Whitney is the person running the course and making sure that everything is done. I'm the instructor of record. This is a graded course. It is a letter grade, and I will be assigning the letter grade to you. Okay, the course is structured, is modular in content. It has a number of modules constructed which lead to the 3 credit hour requirement. Each module is so structured that there are some reading assignments, okay, typically given prior to 1 week in advance. Okay, so this week will be a little different, but from future onwards, because you're starting it now, so we could have not sent you a reading assignment a week before the course even started. It would look a little funny. But from now onwards, whatever will be the topic of next week's assignment. And some modules are multiple week modules, some are single week modules, okay? Each module is given, has been developed and will be taught by a different person. So that person has collected the reading literature for you. You have to come prepared in the classroom with that reading assignment being completed. Otherwise, the lecture would be not very effective. The lectures are structured to be more or less interactive, where you're using that knowledge, how that knowledge that you have learned from the reading assignments, how it is put into practice. We have seen that this is the way that will benefit you the most, and some of it, the way we had structured our GK to 12 Fellows course was also somewhat like this. Okay, so it is a self-driven. You have to be driven by acquiring the knowledge and then really coming to the class with questions. As we will say, okay, this is how you will use this knowledge as far as this project is concerned. So you should have all the questions ready in mind. Each session, module, when it is completed, it has an assignment given. Okay, the assignment, you have to be very careful because you cannot complete it overnight. I'm warning you about that. It will take you some time to finish those, and each assignment will be graded by the person who gave that module. So collectively, all the grades will be collected by Whitney, and then they will be tabulated. And in the course assignment sheet that you've given to them, or you'll be giving to that was sent to you, all the grading scales and all are given. You will actually be registering for this course in the fall. Okay, but everything will be finished before in summer. The reason for that is because that way you can use your UGS scholarship and you don't have to pay for course registration. Okay, so yes.
Why do they have the schools in one stop? How do you look for the schools?
What is it?
I don't know if it's money.
Yeah, I don't think we have it.
Yeah.
So,
We
yeah,
can't
yeah.
register it yet, right?
Yeah. It's called EN. It has a course number. Yeah. And,
Yeah, although that may have changed because when you did it last, it was in the quarter system, so.
Oh, okay. Yes,
You know,
we are
that's the other-
upgrading it
yeah.
for the semester
Semester.
system. Yeah. So that's why it's but it is a proof course. And in future there would be could be possible some other students joining the summer course, just the course itself. As you know, you will be taking a practical course, 1 credit hour course in the fall, and 1 credit hour course in the summer, which are follow-up. The summer course is structured for you to actually take the summer experience, and jointly you'll be teaching an undergraduate class. Okay, we have purposely selected a class which we have found the students, the way it is currently taught, to be extremely boring and not very effective. Okay, and so the challenge there would be using this pedagogy which teachers are doing and which you're learning, that course. So the total course is currently being taught this summer. So all the course contents will be given to you, okay, along with whatever the instructor materials have been doing. So what I would suggest is sometime during the summer, the 4 of you will collect together and divide the total course into 4 units.
We divided it.
Oh, you've divided it?
You'll just need to select which module you'll want to teach.
Yes, and each module will be developed using challenge-based learning. So it will be like there are 4 chapters in that course. Each chapter contents are delivered, and hopefully that will give you practice of first-hand experiencing how to actually use this technique. So, and if you in future, if you are future faculty members, you'll take this back into your teaching experience.
You put it in your portfolio.
Yes.
You put it on your CVs.
CVs. That will be something very outstanding. So that will be your practicum 1 core. So everyone will be teaching about 10 hours?
Yeah, it's 3 weeks because the class meets 3
Yes.
times a week for
3
1
times.
hour. So you'll do that for
Yeah, and some preparation time for it. Okay, so that is the way that would be, and people are most welcome to help when one fellow is teaching, if another fellow has the time to help in that. Will they have an opportunity to look at the, attend Jeff Johnson's?
Yes, and he's actually coming to a class in June. One of our classes this summer to talk to you about the way it's structured. You'll get the syllabus and a book, so you'll actually have the book, the course that they're using for undergraduate book. I ordered them already. I went to pick them up this morning, so they didn't have them yet. I had to sign some papers, but you will get the books soon.
Okay. Now, since both of you have taken gone to undergraduate school here, with me,
Not here.
no, not in UC, but in US.
Yeah.
You two have gone abroad. I'll ask you two also. What in your undergraduate program, particularly in the freshman program, what course you found to be least interesting? Or which you
All of them? Freshman year?
or one required course. Which sometimes in some institutions it is taught as a freshman year, sometimes it is also taught as a first sophomore year. But it is required pretty much of all engineering students.
I was a math major.
Oh.
Okay.
You're in an intro to engineering course.
Okay. Intro to engineering. What about your undergraduate's days?
I would say like organic chemistry.
Okay. But tell me an engineering course.
Strength of materials.
Strength of materials?
My freshman year. I'm going to physics, engineering physics.
Engineering physics, okay. The course that has been selected is electrical circuits. The reason is because that that needs to be more modernized using electronics, okay? And pretty much everything that you touch nowadays involves electronics, but that's not the way it is taught, okay? So the students will say, I do not know why I'm taking this course, why is it required of me? First of all, that is such a fundamental knowledge that you need to possess because you'll be using it sometime or the other in your research work or something like. And it is a required course because if you have to get your professional license, you have to pass your fundamentals of engineering exam, and that's a required core content area which is included in that exam. And you cannot pass it if you complete it, so I'm going to ignore this whole area. You'll find it difficult, though you can pick and choose, but most probably you may create a deep hole for yourself because then you may have to answer pretty much most of the other things, and you may have not taken that much in some other areas. So this is a required course that all engineering students, and based on our surveys, students have not performed that well, particularly non-electrical engineering students.
And that's who you're teaching. They're not electrical. They're chemical and biomedical engineering
Yes.
students.
So that's the whole objective. So it fits in very well, and you get to see how good you did it in that. Before you start teaching the fourth course, we've designed another mini experience for you to practice, and Brian, you must have done it. We run a family science academy during the summer, and so you'll be in that one parent and a student come for 7 Saturdays from 9 to 11:30, and basically engineering project-based learning modules are created which the students do, and the parents participate in workshops to make them aware how they can enhance the interest in STEM learning in their children. Okay, because quite a lot of the parents are really disconnected, and they think that everything is going to be learned in the school, and their role as far as education is concerned is minimal, and which is not correct in this modern day age. Parents, because they spend more time at home, they spend less time in the school. If you look at the whole day time period, so the parents have to, They don't have to be directly teaching as the teachers are doing in the classroom, but they could design certain experiences and the atmosphere at home which is conducive to learning. So that is why the parents and the teachers, and it's geared towards 4th to 7th grades students. So one of the Saturdays is a competition is run in which a student and a parent participate as one unit. So it starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. It has to end and be judged and evaluated, everything from 9 to 11:30. So it's a short type of an experience, and we would like you to design a challenge-based learning type of a project to implement there. The date for that has been fixed.
They changed it?
No, it has been
Okay,
fixed,
it's
yes.
July, it's in July, it's on your syllabus.
Okay. So one Saturday before that, you will go and tell all 4 of you to introduce the topical area, but not the competition by itself, in what area that competition is about. So one thing I would suggest is that you people should, all of you should start getting together sometime to think, brainstorm. And Brian, you've done that before, okay? And so, but the only difference is has to be designed using challenge-based learning, and some of it you did was somewhat like that. Yeah, we may have not called it that, but it is that. It has to showcase engineering, something big problem, and they're doing some small part of it. They should understand the significance where whatever they're doing, where that knowledge is used in the real world. Okay?
Also, the age group is kind of important.
Yes, very, yes. So, and the competition has to be pretty much well defined so that you give a sheet of paper to someone, they have to follow instructions and independently be able to do that, not be coming and asking questions every small thing. It should be, so, and the materials needed for it should not be so expensive that it cannot be replicated by someone else. So it has to be with minimum budget, but very interesting, showcasing engineering, how it is used in the forefronts of knowledge creation, exciting, those are the things, and something which the students can immediately grab onto and say, oh my God, really, this is so important that I have to learn this because this is used so much in my daily life, or I'll be using this knowledge in future. Something which immediately you don't have to lecture for 1 hour to be able to convey that message. So those are the things that have been designed for the structure of this course. So it's a very different type of course, but there are a group of people, very experienced people on those topical areas who have volunteered actually to come and teach you and really give you their own experiences. Okay, so the material you come prepared with, have some questions to ask. The thing that the course will be discuss how to use that for teaching purposes. Okay, that is the main thing. So it will be more of a practice, active learning type of a classroom. Have I covered everything?
There's only one thing left, and then
Yes.
that was the book that you'll be reading over the summer. Was everyone able to get the book, or have you? It was in the syllabus. Yeah, that's the book. Like when you say there'll be a discussion led by you guys over chapter 1 and 2. That's the book that you'll be reading. No, not the electric circuits book. It was
That is for this course. Electric circuits is the course that
for the fall. I just wanted to make sure you guys don't forget to get the book. I sent the link for free. You need a copy of it for free.
Yeah.
Yes.
We probably should let Dave go ahead just so.
Yeah. And
For
for
time's
online
sake,
copy.
yeah.
Yeah, there's an online copy. Yeah.
Okay. And I think that is connected really with the whole course. It's like an umbrella.
Yeah, you can link again, I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
It's not-
So there are some of the basic techniques, issues as far as pedagogy and student learning is concerned. And that book has been prepared by the National Academy of Sciences. Okay. National academies, couple of academies together, people have to say. So it will be a fantastic reading material. Okay. Any other thing?
I think we're good. Thank you very much.
But by the way, is it the first time CEEMS is trying to integrate CBL? Standard learning?
Yes. CBL, I think you'll have I'll be teaching a module on CBL.
Yeah.
It has been there for quite some time, but really more scientifically defined and in a more structured manner by Apple. Okay. They are the people who, the way CBL is used, and they have integrated in a lot of educational projects also. But the main goal was to use challenge-based learning to design the products such that the people that use those projects could learn by themselves. And at the same time, it should use cutting-edge technology. So they should be excited to own something unique, and no matter what price is attached to it, they will come back to buy it. Okay, so it's like creating a hook to be proud of owning that thing. So this is so now it is trickling into education, both at the K to 12 level, because the basic idea behind it lends itself very well to learning. Okay, it's in a nutshell, it is basically contextual, presenting the context why I should learn first, and making the students identify that context rather than being taught. Okay, and then you can proceed with the delivery of the content. And the whole idea is, if the content is delivered this way, where the students have a buy-in up front, they know why I need to learn this content, their desire to learn will be higher, and if their desire to learn is higher, their performance will be higher. So that is the whole premise. Basically, Apple put it in more a structured manner. It has existed in the literature for decades and decades, but not put in a structured manner as a pedagogical technique. It's not that it's not, if you do literature search, you'll find 20, 30 years back also people used it, but very loosely. Okay? So for this project, that is the strategy, teaching strategy that is going to be used. It incorporates all the other best practices like inquiry-based learning, active learning, because it incorporates that. So authentic learning, problem-based learning, project-based learning. So it incorporates those elements of that. But there is a distinct difference between scientific inquiry and this process. And in fact, you'll be writing one of your papers over that, because that's extremely important, because you'll find that to be a confusion in minds of people and also with the teachers also. So that should be sort of very clear. You should not be telling something wrong to the teachers. So that's the whole idea. There are a lot of common things in both the things, but there are some subtle differences. And it's very, very important to point out those, to be very clear about those subtle differences which differentiate the two.
We should probably go ahead and let David get started, just because I know we only have till 11:30, so
Yeah.
I know he's got a lot planned, so.
Okay.
Put it on fast.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Thank you.
Hi. Okay, we'll do this quickly. I'm David Verneau, and I see you've all gotten your name tags. If any of the rest of you want to join us, feel free to grab supplies, and I won't force you, but you're welcome to become a part of the party here. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then we'll find out about you folks, and then I'll tell you, we'll get into the meat of what we're going to be doing today. David Verneau, I've been teaching in one form or another for 40 years. I retired from public schools last year after my teaching involved science from elementary through high school and some curriculum work in science. I started out self-contained 5th grade, so I taught everything to 38 or 28 kids, depending on the year, and then moved from there into more math and science and ultimately science. The picture that I drew is a bacterium. And the reason I drew it is it represents me because I'm really old, but I'm still evolving. So that's the idea. So now we're going to go around and each of you just tell us a little bit about yourself. The subject, the reason it says subject or school or subject taught is that usually I use this with public school teachers when I do workshops, the same kind of format, so it doesn't apply. I might say, in fact, I'll replace that with what field of engineering is your specialty. Okay? So, go ahead, Brian.
So, Brian Irvin, I'm an electrical engineer. I was math major, chem minor, pre-health in undergrad, and then I went on to this. My area of study is brain-computer interface. Drawn a bike because that's a lot more accessible as a engineering platform in my mind, and I ride a bike all the time. I was part of the GK-12 program. I worked at Hughes. Still been kind of tied to Hughes, doing coaching and stuff this year. And I'm electrical engineering now. I think I said that. Finishing my master's this summer and going on to a PhD.
So I understand your undergraduate wasn't an engineering degree,
No.
it's not an engineering, but you were still able to make the transition.
You can come in from any related field kind of thing. I was at Wittenberg University. They didn't have engineering at all, and I wasn't planning on going into engineering until I was about a late senior. And I realized that brain-computer interface wasn't as much medical as it was engineering at this point.
Yeah. I mean, that's exciting for me from multiple levels. I have an 18-year-old, my youngest, who's going to college next fall, and he's considering chemistry as a major and has all kinds of interests, but he can do his undergraduate work and still end up moving into some field of engineering. Okay, Patricia.
Yeah, I'm Patricia Capo. I did my undergrad in engineering.
Nigeria?
Yeah, chemical engineering, and I did my master's in UC, chemical engineering as well. I just finished last fall, and I started my PhD in materials engineering. And my research area is on energy storage nanocomposites.
On what now?
Energy storage nanocomposites.
Okay.
So the use of, like we're looking at substituting anode materials in battery with graphene-based materials. So it's an interesting area, an interesting field, and we're carrying out a lot of research in that area.
Great. Next is Wyatt, and your picture. Can you explain your picture, please?
Okay, that's a round bottom flask with 3 necks, and I usually use it for my polymerization, for synthesis of my materials, and I just thought, okay. And then the flowers are just there to beautify it, I guess.
Sure. Okay. Thanks. Go ahead.
My name is Ankuman Shrestha.
Ankuman?
Okay. The way to pronounce it is A as in Aloha, N as in Nancy, K-U as in Kruger, R as in Richard, Ankur. People have a hard time pronouncing my name, so I just came up with this. But I did my undergrad back in India in biotechnology. And then right now I'm pursuing my PhD in chemical engineering. My research area is accelerated waste biodegradation and water treatment. And the picture you see over here is basically a guy using a pulley and pulling a weight, so that's signified that I love to work out and stay fit, so one of the things.
So some physics and working out.
Yeah, stay fit and healthy.
Thanks. Whitney.
My name is Whitney Gaskins. I've been at UC for a while because I got my bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering. I went to the business college and got a master's degree in quantitative analysis. And I'm finishing my PhD in engineering education, but I'm in the biomedical engineering department. And the part on my picture is just because I'm a passionate person and I really care a lot about things that are in my life. So engineering education, my family, I have 2 dogs. I'm just passionate about stuff. That's the 100%.
Okay, all right.
I'm Sam Miller. I did my undergrad at Notre Dame in chemical and biomolecular engineering. And I'm getting my PhD in materials engineering here. I'm doing work with nanoparticles in drug delivery to cancer cells. That's what my research is going to be in. And I drew the little flask just as my chemical engineering background. So yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thanks. As we go through this in the lesson hour that we have, I'm going to be moving back and forth between delivering some content and talking about the standards and science and engineering education, and then stepping back to talk a little bit about pedagogy, why I did what I did with you folks, and how you might take some of those pedagogical skills when you're working with your own groups, with the circuits class or beyond if you're moving to university or other teaching. This is probably obvious to you, but relationships are a big part of being able to work well with a group and have the students can accept you and be receptive to working hard to do the work for you and for themselves. And so getting to know them and getting to know little things about the students is really important. This is one thing that I do at the beginning of every workshop, but there are lots of techniques that you can do with classes to get to know the students and then to kind of relate to them and have a way to converse with them as you as you move through the class. So I was asked first to talk to you a little bit about the structure of K-12 education in Ohio and the United States. For a couple of years, you grew up with Ohio, with the United States K-12 education. For Patricia and Ankuran, this is relatively new to you, so I'm going to just walk you through it briefly. In Ohio, in particular, generally in the United States, in the K-12, kindergarten, 5 years old, start school. My wife's a kindergarten teacher. I have so much respect for kindergarten teachers. Those teachers teach everything. They're typically self-contained, and because of the political realities in Ohio education today, they are told you must teach the kids to read and to write and to do mathematics. And so, tragically, a lot of students get very little and sometimes no real science until they get into 3rd through 6th grade. Now, there are a lot of teachers who are really excited about science, and they recognize that if the students are doing science and engineering activities, an exciting, engaging engineering activity will provide a hook so that the students will have something to read about and to write about, and to do math and charts and graphs related to. So that's a real push, is to try to get, and some teachers do a lot of science in primary, some do very little. And you get into the middle grades, in 3 through 6, sometimes they're still self-contained, and then you start to get some departmentalization where you'll have maybe a teacher teaching math and science, and another teacher teaching language arts, and language arts and social studies. By the time you get into 7th and 8th grade, most of those teachers are departmentalized, so you'll have a teacher teaching science full-time. In a large school, they may be just teaching 7th grade science 6 periods a day. In smaller schools, they might be teaching some 7th grade and some 8th grade science, but they're typically all science. So these teachers are not usually comfortable with science. They don't have a science background. One of the big concerns is they may be giving misconceptions to their students because they think they understand the science. They don't. But there's a lot of enthusiasm there. By the time you get to middle grades, these teachers have a stronger science background and are focusing more on learning the science. And then, and in all of these cases, the science delivered throughout the year is across disciplines, and by that I mean you'll have some earth science, some life science, and some physical science all mixed together throughout the year, and all the way, including in middle school now. When you get to high school, that's when you have these particular courses that are taught. In Ohio, there are two courses that are pretty much required of every student in every school district. Typically, in ninth grade, they take a physical science class. That course, when I taught it last year, it was about 50% introductory chemistry, 25% introductory physics, and about 25% introductory earth and space science. That curriculum is changing a little bit, but that's basically the same breakdown. Mostly introductory chemistry and physics with a little earth science or space science thrown in. 10th grade is life science, is biology typically, and then to graduate in Ohio, you need to have at least 3 courses in science in high school. The third one is a chosen course. Typically, it's some kind of chemistry. Some kind of chemistry class. Depending on the student, it might be more quantitatively related or more qualitatively related. And then I'd say most students go on and take at least a 4th class. So a typical sequence might be physical science, biology, chemistry, and then physics. Though you'll have a lot of students who are taking anatomy and physiology or an engineering-related class or environmental science, geology, that sort of thing. Are there any questions that you have about Ohio and how science is laid out in Ohio?
Who decides on this curriculum? Who decides on this curriculum?
What's that?
Who decides on this curriculum?
Oh, who decides on the curriculum? The state has a set of standards, and you'll see a copy of that in just a minute. So the standards say these are the topics that kindergarten teachers kindergarten students should take. In first grade, you study this content. In second grade, this content, etc., all the way through 8th grade. And that is pretty much set by the state. It's standards. It's not a textbook. It's not particular lessons. The textbook or the other curriculum materials or the lessons are chosen by the individual school district. But those need to support the standards in the standards document. When you get to high school, again, the state has a physical science set of standards, and it's pretty lean. It doesn't have a lot of detail to it, but it says these particular topics and these particular contents to this level are taught in physical science, and then it will go on and say, but when you get to this level, like this doesn't include, for example, nuclear chemistry, which we would assume you would do up here at a higher level. So it lays out more what's taught in each of these courses. And for some of the advanced courses, there's a chemistry syllabus, there's a physical syllabus, a physics syllabus. There's no anatomy and physiology syllabus, and so that's left pretty much up to the districts. And it's guided a lot by what textbook is chosen for that course. Do you have some questions?
Yeah, actually, my mother's a curriculum director for a district.
Okay.
So she's in charge of a district and figuring out how to get from K-12, like K2 to 3 to 6, that kind of thing. And she just took a new job as a curriculum director somewhere else, and it was, well, the kindergarten teachers are using this idea, and then the very next year they're kind of scrapping everything they did before and doing something completely different. These people got their material from like 6 years ago, somebody handed it down to them. This person just bought their own stuff. This one is using something that they started their career with 20 years ago, and it's really inconsistent. And so she's trying to come through and kind of unify the curriculum from year to year. And so you'll have all kinds of different things depending on the district.
In the United States, in some other countries, there and maybe in your countries, the curriculum there's a national curriculum set up by the state, and that national curriculum specifies this is what's taught at each grade level and each course. High school students will take these particular courses. It might be more specifically specified, and there might even be an assigned curriculum, and here's the textbook that's being used, etc. In the United States, first of all, because of the separation of powers between the federal government and the state governments, the states hold a lot of control over decisions, and one of those decisions is how to structure their educational system. So in the United States, each state sets its own standards. That's created some real problems, especially as the United States is competing internationally with, and you have basically 50 different states each deciding on its own set of standards. And then we're competing with a country, like Germany, for example, or China or India, or that may say we're going to have a national curriculum and we're going to pour all our resources into developing this national curriculum. So there have been some movements, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, to create more national sets of standards for the United States in a way that still maintains the control by the state.
Excuse me. Just out of curiosity, like kids that are arts or social sciences inclined, do they also have to take science education in high school?
Yes, in high school, these courses are required for every student going through high school.
Regardless of anyone?
Regardless of what their interest is. Typically we don't put students on a certain educational track the students will focus, like, my son, for example, was really interested in science, so he took every science class he could take, but he also took 4 years of English and 4 years of social studies and 5 different math classes, so he had all of those as well as the science classes that he took. Ohio has a set of math standards, a set of science standards, a set of English standards, and so those are also social studies standards as well. So, any other questions on this? Okay, now stepping back a minute to talk about pedagogy, about strategy. You've got these cards. In education, there's a term called formative assessment. Now what I want you to do is we're going to do a little formative assessment. Take these cards. If you have no idea what formative assessment is, maybe it's the first time you've heard of it, I want you to take the red card and put it on the bottom of the stack. If you've heard of it, you kind of have an idea, but you're not really sure how it might be used, you put the yellow card on the bottom of the stack. If you're familiar with formative assessment, with that term, and how it might be used, and even some examples of how it's used in the classroom, put the green card on the stack. So, have no idea about formative assessment, know it kind of, pretty comfortable with it. Okay, so just put that down now, and have your stack ready to go. And when I say now, I just want you to hold your stack up like this, okay? Now. Okay, now this is great because what I've done is I can look around the room now and I can get a really good feel for what you know or don't know about formative assessment. This is a formative assessment activity because what it does is it can inform my decisions on how I instruct the class. It's a summative assessment is an assessment at the summation after you're done. You take the exam at the end of the course, you get a grade on it, or at the end of a chapter, you take an exam and you get a grade on it. Formative assessment is information that the teacher is getting throughout the class, so I can say, oh, I know Whitney and I know formative assessment because we're in education. You folks have never heard of it before, but formative assessment can be a really powerful part of your teaching a service class or an undergraduate class or whatever, because it helps you understand where the students are right now, what their understanding is. And maybe it's in general about the whole class or it's about a particular topic. And then based on that, you know, wow, I can go into that I need to really go into that in detail, or I can give you a quick summary and move on because you already have it. Okay? So now, hold on to these cards. Standards. So if you can turn around and take a look at this poster here. I'm going to check my timepiece because we're running out of time. And just grab your cards to be ready. We have, in Ohio, in science and English and social studies. So science, English and math and social studies. If you have heard of Ohio's new learning standards for science, Hold up your green, and you know kind of about it, hold up your green card, kind of, or this is the first time you've heard of it, red card. So what's your understanding of Ohio's new learning standards for science? I see some greens and some yellows and some reds, okay? Next generation science standards, the new national standards in science, red, yellow, or green. Just hold it up. Okay. Okay. So what I'm seeing here is that some of you have heard of Ohio standards. None of you really, except for Whitney, have heard of the next generation science standards in the national level. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time with this because this is coming down the pike, and even though it's not here yet in Ohio, it's going to be driving a whole lot of what goes on in science nationally, and so science and engineering as well nationally. Common Core, I'm not going to bother with the cards again in the interest of time, but in Ohio, we are currently implementing new learning standards that were written by Ohio. But for the last few years, there's been a national movement to develop national science standards. Because of the way the United States works, these national science standards cannot be mandated by the federal government, but individual states can choose to adopt them. And they're really powerful, good stuff. Now, that's what's happened in English and math. In English and math, there's a set of standards called the Common Core. It was developed nationally. 46 states have adopted them. There are 4 states that have said, no, we're going to go our own way, but 46 states have adopted them. And so that means math in Ohio looks a whole lot like math in California or math in Florida, okay? And the same with English. Social studies, Ohio has new learning standards in social studies. There's no real movement yet to write national social studies standards. There's been talk about it, but that's as far as we've gotten. Okay? So this is what we're going to focus on, but I wanted to put it in perspective with all of this. Okay? Any questions? Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what are the 4 states that haven't adopted the Common Core?
Well, I know one of them is Texas, because Texas is its own country, and it's in mine. I should say that. Don't go there. In fact, we had somebody who was on the and I think Alaska is one of the others, Minnesota may be one, I'm not sure. We had somebody last summer speak to us from CEEMS who was on the committee that was writing the Next Generation Science Standards, and he was working on some of the engineering pieces, and he was from Texas, and he said 46 states there are 26 states that are actually involved now in developing the science standards, and more will come on board. He said, and he was talking about Common Core and all. He said, Texas hasn't adopted Common Core, probably won't adopt these. So he said, we used to be our own country, So with that in mind, let's start with Ohio. So take one of those and pass it around. Take one of those and pass it around. And one of these as well. I'm going to write this down somewhere because I don't have an easy link to the website, but if you write, the website for Ohio's Department of Education is education.ohio.gov. So education.ohio.gov, and it'll get you to right here. If I scroll down to the bottom, under Ed for Educators, Academic Content, now this is the smart board. Academic Content Standards, and I click right here, and then I can come over here, scroll down, and click on Science. Now you may or may not have a need to get here, but I wanted to show you where the full documents were for some of this stuff. And then these are Ohio's new learning standards for science. And right here are the content standards and model curricula. What you have is these two documents here, the K through 8 document and the high school science revised document. Let's take a look at the K-8 document first. And you have just a piece of it, a sample, because the whole thing is many pages long and there's no need to really copy all of it. But this is what you've got, this landscape one first. The live document actually has, I emailed you a PDF of just this piece, which, or I emailed it to Whitney and she's going to send it out to you. Okay, great. Yeah, and a quick apology. There was a pre-reading assignment that you were supposed to do for this class. I sent it to the wrong email address, so Whitney got it on Saturday, but she didn't get it on Saturday, and I thought she did. And then, then last night I realized I'd never heard back from her. So, but anyway, you'll have it now. But if you download the document, the full document from the Ohio Department of Education website, these links take you to the different sections. And what I've done is I've given you a copy of the 8th grade, the beginning of the 8th grade documents in here. So you notice here, if I go here and click on grade 8, and the link's not perfect. This is kind of an overview of the content for 8th grade. Now I'm showing you 8th grade in particular because the teachers you'll be working with this summer, some of them teach middle school, so 7th or 8th grade, and some of them teach high school. So we're going to look at the middle school document and the high school document because most of them will be teaching from these documents in their classrooms. There's a grade band theme, order and organization. This science inquiry and application section is important because these are general kind of science process or inquiry standards that move from one grade level to the next. This particular set is for grades 5 through 8. There's a similar set that's not quite as rigorous, that's 1 through 4, and then there's another set that you'll see in the high school document that's even more rigorous. But they follow the same basic structure, identifying questions. So there's asking and identifying questions is throughout, because that's a big part of both science inquiry and engineering. Questions and problems. Designing and conducting a scientific investigation. I won't read these for you, but if you look down through these, one of your homework assignments is going to be to look at this set, science inquiry and application, and talk about how that can be applied to engineering, to an engineering challenge. And then you see, here's a short overview of earth science content, physical science, and life science for 8th grade. And if you turn the page, you can see that on the next page, you have the beginning of the earth and space science section. You have over here on the left the content statement. So this gets into a little bit more detail on the content for the topic, which is physical earth. And it says this topic focuses on the physical features of Earth and how they formed, including the interior of the Earth, rock record, plate tectonics, and landforms. And then over here, the content elaboration is really important because this helps you understand the details about what is expected in Ohio science at that grade level. For grade 8, what should have been covered in earlier grades, so you're building on it, and what you don't need to worry about in 8th grade because it's going to be covered in high school. So this says further applications of concepts. So waves, gravitational energy, transformations, radioactivity, these are topics that you don't need to get into in 8th grade because they'll be covered in high school.
I have a question.
Yes?
So before you teach your 8th grade concepts, is this where formative assessment is important? Because I'm looking at this content elaboration, and what if your students didn't get that information?
And that's an excellent question because some kind of formative assessment, and it could be something simple like this, or it could be more like a paper and pencil kind of thing, or There are lots of different techniques for doing formative assessments in classrooms. If anybody's interested, I can kind of email you about a dozen books and lots of stuff on that. But to find out which of this do your students already know? Because if they don't have some of this down already from grades 3 through 5 or 6 and 7, you may want to cover some background information prior to getting into this, or weave some of this into this instruction. Other questions about this? Now, then, when you flip to the back, the cognitive demands, the idea of cognitive demands are that there are different levels of rigor with which you're going to be instructing and creating experiences for the students. And in Ohio, there are 4 levels of cognitive demand, 4 levels of rigor. We'll go over those on another sheet, the third sheet that I passed out. This sheet gives you some examples and some strategies. Now, to be honest with you, this is okay to browse through and to get an idea of, but this probably would not be as valuable for you to spend a lot of time with. If you had limited time, which we all do, I'd say you might look over this, but spend more of your time back up here with the content. And then get some ideas. Because in terms of what Ohio requires that you cover the standards. So this stuff, the content, and then the content elaboration. Ohio does not require that you do these particular activities to support it. These are just suggestions. Some of them are really valuable, some not so much. And then the last page, common misconceptions. I think the big, again, some of these links are going to be valuable for you, some maybe not so. The big idea here is not that you go to all this in particular, but that you are aware that students are going to enter the classroom with certain misconceptions about certain misconceptions about whatever the topic is. And if you can understand those, maybe with a formative assessment or going to some of the literature that talks about middle school common misconceptions for earth science, that can help you out. Questions about 8th grade?
So they have to basically take time to go over these and acquaint themselves.
Right.
Yes.
And I will, and on the Ohio website, on the OED website, if you get this full document and go there, the links on there are live. But if you're working with a teacher this summer or next year who's teaching 7th grade, it would be important for you to go to the 7th grade section of this document, the Ohio document, because that's the content that they're going to be teaching from. That's the content they're going to need to weave into their engineering activities.
One thing that some of the terms you need to make yourself very familiar with, say for example cognitive demands, because the teachers will be talking to you about it. The teachers in the lessons and all they develop, they have to address that. Misconceptions will be another thing, and misconception, there'll be a separate session on that. So some of these things, they're not inventing themselves, they're coming from here, which they have to address. So it's very important that you take the time. You're literate people, you'll very quickly grasp it, but you need to make yourself very thorough with the terms that are used.
Let's talk about cognitive demand quickly. Dr. Capritti brought that up. If you go to the high school document, now what you're seeing right here is the first page of the high school document, and that's this. you have a selection from the high school document here. But very near the end of the high school document is this cognitive demands list. And the cognitive demands list it shows you different levels from recalling accurate science at the lowest cognitive demand level, interpreting and communicating concepts, demonstrating scientific knowledge, and then the highest level, the highest cognitive demand is designing technological and engineering solutions using science concepts. So in Ohio, engineering has been included in the science standards through this cognitive demands chart. And the expectation is that teachers are going to be doing engineering activities with a lot of the content that they're covering in their class. And not as a separate standalone engineering activity, but integrated into the science that they're teaching. Now, when we talk about the national standards, the next generation science standards, engineering is integrated a little bit differently, and I'll explain that because it's exciting the way they've done that. One of your homework assignments is going to be to talk about this highest cognitive demand level in particular, and how that it allows engineering to be incorporated into the Ohio science education. Look at the high school. If you notice, in the cover shows these are the courses for which there are syllabi in the Ohio Science Standards. And you notice physical science and biology. And physical science and biology are especially important because starting in 2014, 2015, that school year, there will be end-of-course exams administered to all high school students in those two courses in particular. So those will be two required exams that will be held accountable for the content with exams in those classes. And then the structure of the high school standards is a little bit different. There's a syllabus like this. The syllabus in gray, the gray part shows you just a listing of topics. And when you say when you come down a listing of topics, and I look at atoms, and then I look at ions, cations and anions, that's a broad topic, and I might interpret that in one way, and somebody else might interpret that in a very different way in terms of how deep to go. And so then, if you come down to the content elaboration section on the second sheet, notice this is the content elaboration for the first category, which is classification of matter. And so if I come down here and go to physical science, here you see on the screen the topics, and then when I come down to classification of matter, these are the details. So these next few pages as you scroll down, these cover in more detail the individual topics. So on the first, in the first part of the syllabus, it covers atoms in 3 lines. This goes into the detail of what we mean by the topic of atoms in high school physical science. So the syllabus will be a good source for you in terms of determining depth of knowledge in some of those high school classes. Now, some of the teachers you'll be working with will be teaching classes that do not have syllabi attached to them. You know, if they're teaching an AP physics class, for example, advanced placement physics, no syllabus here, that's college level stuff. Anatomy, physiology, no syllabus. Engineering, there's some teachers that are in our program who are teaching specifically engineering classes, and no syllabi for that. Any questions about Ohio? Then along comes the national, the next generation science standards. And it's, it seems a little confusing to a lot of us that Ohio is just in the process of implementing new Ohio standards. And now, as of April, last month, new national standards in science came out. And there were a number of us who were saying, wait a minute, why are we going and moving ahead to making the transition to new Ohio science standards? If we just wait a few years, we'll have national standards and we won't have to make two transitions. And the reason the reason that my understanding anyway of why we had to do that is because it was law. The Ohio State Legislature legislated a number of years ago that Ohio would have new standards in all four content areas: math, science, social studies, and reading, and language arts. Written in 2011 and implemented now, and that law is in place, and so that transition is taking place. Now, a lot of what's in Ohio, the Ohio stuff that we just went through, and that you'll find in the website, is good stuff. It's based on the same foundational documents that were developed nationally and on international benchmarking that also informed the national standards. So it's not as if Ohio is making a turn this way and then it's going to have to turn 180 degrees in a few years. But there will be a kind of a tack that will need to be taken and a change in the terminology and the structure when Ohio finally goes to national standards, which isn't official, but I would bet the farm that that's what's going to happen. So on the national level, and if you can write this down, if you go to the NSTA.org, NSTA.org, that's the National Science Teachers Association. It's the, if you're not familiar with it, National Science Education, so it's the National Organization for Science Educators. And on the NSTA homepage, over here in the corner, this little symbol is the symbol for the next generation science standards. So if you go to NSTA homepage and then click there, you will get to NSTA's page with all their resources on the next generation science standards, or NGSS is what it's called. Now, even though most of your teachers are going to be teaching from Ohio, I think it's really important that you become familiar with the national standards as well for a couple of reasons. One is that there's some conceptual frameworks in the national standards that you'll find really powerful to work with now with your teachers. And as you work in engineering and engineering education over the next decades, the national standards, NGSS, these are what are going to be driving science education nationally in Ohio and across the country. And so your familiarity with it, I think, will be really valuable. So with that in mind, let me scroll down through and show you this page, because what NSTA has done is they've taken these national standards and they've parsed them. They've kind of divided them up. So if you come down and click right here where it says your complete guide to the next generation science standards, come on, let's see, okay, right here we go. View the next generation science standards and supporting materials from NSTA. And this gives you more stuff than you probably would ever want, including documents that NSTA has created about the standards. But if we come down here, there's this is a lot of the document, of the next generation standards document. The front matter would give you a good overview of the whole standards. And then here are the standards organized in different ways with PDFs. I'm not going to go into the structure of the standards now because that would take much too long, but some of these appendices you might find really helpful. In fact, we're going to take a look at Appendix I, Engineering Design in NGSS, because that relates directly to what we're doing. But first of all, I wanted to show you how NGSS is laid out, so. Can't really read this up here, but you can see it here. Now, you will, in the language, as you hear talk about the national standards, you'll hear reference to the term framework. And what that means is that a number of years ago, the National Research Council was charged with developing a framework for science standards, for national science standards. They weren't told to actually write the science standards, but to develop a document with guidelines that would inform the development. And so when it says the 3 dimensions of the framework, that's what that means. These came from that document that was written to guide the development of national standards. But these have become the 3 key areas of the national standards. And if you notice, there's science and engineering practices. Now, with science and engineering practices, notice first of all that engineering is right there in it. Past science standards, engineering has been an afterthought if it's been there at all, but now science is right there, kind of integral to the practices, to the standards. And in some cases, these practices are practices that are used both by scientists and by engineers. So developing and using models, number 2, planning and carrying out investigations. In other cases, the practice changes a little bit, whether you're talking about science or the purpose of science or the purpose of engineering. So number 1, scientists in general will ask questions and then try to design investigations to answer those questions. Engineers will define problems, try to define the problem in ways that then you can design investigations to solve that problem. And then when you get down to number 6, for example, a main goal of science is to construct explanations that answer the question that was asked. A main goal of engineering is to design solutions to solve the problem that was identified. And so those are the science and engineering practices. And those practices will inform a lot of what's done in the science classroom. Then there are cross-cutting concepts. And the cross-cutting concepts, the idea here, these are big ideas that we should really include in most of what we do in science and engineering. And I'll have to just tell a quick story on this. Number 3, scale, proportion, and quantity. Often we teach each topic in isolation without connecting it to the big picture. I was made aware of that when I was teaching 6th grade science a number of years ago. And I was asking the students through an activity that we did called a KWL chart, what they knew about matter. And one of my brightest students, he said what he knew about matter is that all non-living things, or no, what they knew about atoms. It was what do they know about atoms? He said all non-living things are made of atoms. And I said, okay, what about living things? And he said, living things aren't made of atoms, they're made of cells. And so what that told me is that he'd studied somewhere about cells making up living things, and he'd studied somewhere about atoms, but he didn't have the big picture of scale, that cells are, that atoms are tiny, and then atoms build molecules, which build, more complex molecules, and ultimately build biological structures such as cells, which are then components of organisms and such. He didn't have that idea of scale. He studied each piece in isolation. The idea with these cross-cutting concepts is to build those big conceptual frameworks throughout. And then there are the disciplinary core ideas. And one of the exciting things about the next generation science standards is that typically when we've studied science in K through 12 education. We've studied earth science, life sciences, physical science. And that's been it. But you notice number 4, engineering, technology, and the applications of science is its own disciplinary core idea. It's its own science discipline. And that was put in there specifically. And you notice there are 2 pieces to it. There's engineering design, which is the design process, the engineering design process, and then links among engineering, technology, science, and society. How engineering is used in science, how scientific understanding informs engineering, and how science and engineering together can have an impact on society, how societal demands and needs and politics and all of that can have an impact on technology. So all of those are a part of that last disciplinary core idea. I've done a lot of talking and you've done a lot of listening, so let me step back before we get into any more details here. Are there any observations or questions that you have about any of this national structure, national science structure?
That symbol that they have for NGSS actually each is the leg, these 3. That's why they call it the 3-dimensional framework.
Okay, so when you go to this symbol right here,
You have to, yeah.
Yeah, and I've lost the symbol, but
I think one back if you go.
that one right up
Yes.
there in the corner.
So those are those 3.
Each color is a different part of that framework.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And actually, when they prepare those documents, they color coded them that way.
Right. In fact, when you get on the web and look at some of this document the documents on the web, it's an interactive kind of document where you click on certain sections and the colors change depending on which part of that framework they come from.
I think really the main thing is for you to yourself read this whole thing. And you should be able to understand. The main thing is what was to grasp the philosophy behind it, why they have come up with this 3-dimensional framework.
These are different. The first piece that you're getting is the appendix on engineering design from the Next Generation Science Standards. And the other 2 are articles from National Science Teacher journals about different pieces of the frameworks or these national standards. This is one of the documents that had I successfully emailed that hopefully the work to you beforehand, you would have gotten this. I'm not going to walk you through this whole document now. You can read this for homework, but look at the Appendix 1, Engineering Design and NGSS. And I want you to walk you, first of all, look at the back of the first page. And this is something I might ask, I might, if we had a lot more time, I'd do more formative assessment work with you with these cards or with other activities, but we have about 6 minutes left. Notice A, B, and C. If you go to engineering research, engineering literature, or engineering education literature, there are lots of lists of the engineering design process. And I've seen lists that are 5 steps, or in fact, I heard there was one list that was developed for elementary students, and it had 5 steps. And the teacher said, when they developed that list, don't have any more than 5 steps, because that's all the fingers these kids have in their hand to make it remember 5 steps. But for NGSS, they've divided it into just 3 basic areas. Defining and delimiting the engineering problem, and then designing solutions, and then optimizing those solutions. And that's, each one of those can be broken down into multiple steps. But the idea is, first, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And what limits do we have on it? What constraints on that problem? And that's a big part of what we do in engineering design in the classroom, and what they'll be doing, these teachers will be doing. What constraints are we going to put on the design that you're creating? And then we create a solution, or multiple solutions, we test those solutions, and then based on those solutions, we modify those or optimize the design. Okay? So those are the three basic steps. And then if you notice, what I like, if you turn to the part that says grades K through 2, this article talks about how engineering design builds starting in the primary grades with 5 and 6 year olds all the way up through high school. The three basic pieces are there in this little diagram, but as you look here, we've got define, develop solutions, and optimize. This kind of describes what they would do in kindergarten, what those mean. Then when you turn the page, now when you get to middle grade, to upper elementary, it gets a little more sophisticated. The same pieces are still there, define, develop, and optimize. And then you have middle grades, and ultimately on the back page, right here, you have high school. What does it look like for high school students? So spend some time looking at these to just see how these three parts of the engineering design process develop from one grade level to the next. Don't worry about this table, this stuff. These make reference to particular parts of the NGSS standards that also include engineering. If you want to dig into that some more, that's fine. But your homework will have you making some specific reflections on these particular segments. Okay? Questions about this appendix? Core ideas of engineering technology and technology. This describes in more detail the pieces, not just of the engineering design process. This appendix that you saw here, that appendix referred to the engineering design part. This talks about both parts of the engineering, technology, and the applications of science. What they call Core Idea 1, which is the engineering design. It starts at the bottom of page 1 here. And then it talks about Core Idea 2, and it breaks it down into two parts. The interdependence of engineering, of science, engineering, and technology. And then Core Idea 2B, that 2A is the interdependence, and Core 2B is how engineering and science and technology connect to society and the relationship there. Okay. There will be part of your homework that will ask you to kind of explain in your own words what those mean. And then science and engineering practices. The science and engineering practices, we're getting back to these pieces in the next generation science standards, because these are the 8 practices that were identified in the framework and that were elaborated on in the standards documents. This talks about those 8 practices, and it talks about, because those are really kind of what scientists do, how science takes place in the world, and as well, identifying, generating new knowledge based on questions that we ask, or how engineering takes place in the world through identifying a problem and then creating a solution. If you notice, there's kind of a table here where it goes through the 8 different science and engineering practices. And in each case, it explains with some examples how this practice would look in science, how this practice would look in engineering. Now, a part of your homework is to, in your own words, explain what you're seeing in this document, in each of these boxes. Okay? And one of the goals with that is that you come away with a clearer understanding of what these 8 practices are and how they would look in a science classroom and how they would look when you're doing engineering. And then the rest of the article talks a little bit more about the practices and why engineering is important in the K through 12 education. But and then as we are out of time, you have this electronically, so but I'm just giving you a copy of it, print copy, so I can go over it with you. This is your homework. There's a lot here. I don't expect that you write me pages and pages in every section. In fact, if you were doing this on your word processor and you called this up in Word, if you just gave me what would fit in those boxes, that would be fine. I don't expect, I mean, if you need to write more, it'll wrap over the next page. That's not an issue. But you're talking about the top cognitive demand in Ohio. In each case, going back to the documents that I've given you here, engineering core ideas. The second page, and I could have put this in a table, but I thought about it and had more time. But the idea is that you're paraphrasing what you see out of that, out of that document about the science and engineering practices, those 8 practices. And then on the last page, going back to the Ohio content standards and telling you why it's important that you have some understanding of the Ohio content standards when you work with these teachers, and then what's important about the national content standards in science that we have out now that might be especially important for you and the teachers you're working with. And then if there's another question you want to ask and answer to show me that you've gotten something important else in addition that you've gotten from the material, go ahead and do that. I've unloaded a lot on you. If I'd had 5 hours or 3 hours or even an hour, 2 hours instead of 1, I would have stepped back and done more formative assessment work, because often when I get silence and I ask for questions, it means I don't even know enough to ask a question. I'm just overwhelmed by it all. So one of the things that I'll ask Whitney to go ahead and do is, if she forwards my email to you, it has my email address and it has my cell phone number. Feel free to call me or email me if you have any questions on any of this. Because there's a lot of pieces here, and I don't expect a dissertation on each one. I don't have time to read all that. But one of the things that I've learned is one of the best ways for you to really incorporate new understandings is to put it in your own words, is to write a paraphrase or a synopsis, summary of what you've learned. And that was part of my goal in this, in the pieces here. A few sentences in your own words. And then also how you're going to apply it to the work that you're going to be doing with the students this summer and maybe beyond. Okay?
And we'll be getting another presentation, David's going to present to the teachers later on in the summer. But we wanted to give you all kind of a little primer first, because obviously they already know what standards are, so we would go in with that assumption when talking to them. So
this is a formative assessment technique. I want you to take maybe 1 minute on it. Don't worry, but the idea is, it's called an exit ticket because as they leave the classroom, they fill this out and they drop it off or hand it to you. That's their ticket to get out the door. They can't get out the door without filling it out. And so the idea is, when I look at these tonight, I'll have a better idea of what you understand, what went well with my teaching, what didn't go well, what questions you still have, etc. And that'll help inform if I were to work with you, if you were walking back into my classroom tomorrow, for example.